Welcome back to the West London Witch. This episode includes a story of suicide and may not be suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Some people are just lucky. They always seem to land on their feet. But when you dabble in the paranormal, it's a roll of the dice. You never know what may come through. You might be able to summon Grandma with your Hasbro Ouija board. But how do you really know it's her? What if it's a spirit pretending to be her? What if it's not Grandma at all, but rather something dark, evil, and wickedly unholy? Do you really know how to send them back from whence they came? Do you know how to properly seal that door? You may walk away totally unscathed, or you might forever walk with a spirit in your shadow. Hello and welcome to episode 8 of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. Today we have 2 stories for you about 2 times where people just got lucky. Story number 1 takes us to the land of Lady Luck herself, Las Vegas. While on a trip with his dad and girlfriend, Jake experienced a little more than just the glittering lights of the Las Vegas Strip. I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is the West London Witch, Episode 8, Close Encounters of the Supernatural Kind.
At the end of last year, 2019, my dad decided that he was going to take me and my girlfriend at the time to Vegas. And my girlfriend was super duper into the ghosts and the occult and witches and all that stuff. So she found out that there's this place called Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum.
Ah, Zach Bagans. For those of you who haven't seen the show Ghost Adventures, Zach was the charismatic, energetic, and wholly entertaining host for 23 seasons. He's known for his energy, passion, and very spiky hair. In addition to the show and writing books on the paranormal, Zach now has a museum of haunted items in Las Vegas.
And basically what he did was he took this old-timey house that was basically right between downtown, Fremont Street and the Strip, and he turned it into a collection of all of his stuff. He was on, I think it was Ghost Adventures. And so I was like, oh, I'm interested in this stuff too. Not as much as her, but I was really interested in it. And so we went there. And we go into this first room, and the first room was had a bunch of creepy dolls and had a bunch of shrunken heads and all this stuff in it. And, the tour guide was talking to us, and I just happened to look down at the ground, and I see that there's a quarter just laying on the ground. And I was like, oh, cool, a quarter. And I picked it up, and I put it in my pocket. And then as we went through the museum, there was, weird stuff that was only happening around me. They had a doll called Peggy the doll, and they had one of those the ghost boxes, the ones that make the static and then it switches channels every 100th of a second or whatever it is.
A spirit box is a tool used by paranormal investigators to help spirits communicate in real time. The box scans through FM and AM radio frequencies while also using white noise to allow the spirit's voices to create full words or phrases. They are a controversial piece of equipment, lauded by some, but also seen as unreliable by others. However, they were a favorite piece of equipment often used by the Ghost Adventures team.
You know, we went in there and they had it playing and you could talk to Peggy, and we walked into this room and nobody wanted to talk to Peggy except for me. Like, it was so awkwardly quiet that I was like, I feel like I have to talk. So I said, hello. And then I got a response back from the ghost box that sounded a lot like the words, hello. And then I was like, oh, that's a little weird. And everybody in the room was kind of like laughing and all that stuff. And then I said, how are you? And then we heard back, good. And then this other person tried talking to it and it didn't reply. And then my girlfriend tried to talk to it very briefly and it didn't reply. And then this woman who was in our group who only spoke Spanish said something in Spanish and it didn't reply. And so as a joke, I went, ¿Hablas español? And we got back, sí. And everybody at that point left the room. One of the interesting things that they had inside this museum was Jack Kevorkian, his death van, which is basically, I don't know if you know the story, but basically this guy named Jack Kevorkian drove a van around, and anybody who wanted to die, he gave them, what was it called? Like voluntary euthanasia or something like that.
Jack Kevorkian was a pathologist commonly known as Dr. Death. He was an outspoken proponent for physician-assisted suicide. He is believed to have assisted in over 130 deaths, stating that dying is not a crime. He was arrested in 1998 in the case of Thomas Yauch, a man who was suffering from end stages of Lou Gehrig's disease. Kevorkian was tried and convicted for his role in the voluntary euthanasia of Mr. Yauch. He was later released on parole in 2007 under the strict guidelines that he may never advise or be a part of any procedure of physician-assisted suicide.
So basically, this van, they would go into this van and he would pump them full of whatever drugs it was that killed them. And they died in this van, and then he would go take it and all that stuff. And they had the actual van in it, and it was a Volkswagen microbus from like the 70s or whatever. And I'm telling you this because it comes into play later on. So we get out of the place and we start, doing what tourists do. We went to like the M&M factory, went to all that stuff. And that night, my girlfriend's wallet got stolen. And we were like, okay, that's pretty bad luck. She accidentally left it at a slot machine, but she didn't realize it, and I could have swore she didn't, but she did. So there's like a video of it and everything. We're like, oh man, that's really bad luck. And then the next day we went out, and for some reason I kept getting handed quarters. Like I kept getting we went to a slot machine place, and I was like, oh, I only have a 5. Can you give me quarters? And they gave me $5 worth of quarters because the slots were a quarter. And then she was like, oh, you know what? Here's $1 extra in quarters just for fun. And then a lady later on came up to me and was like, hey, I'm done doing the slots. Here's like $1.50 in quarters. Have fun, you two. It was so weird. And then I randomly would find quarters sitting on the ground. Meanwhile, I have the quarter I found at the Haunted Museum in my pocket. And it was at this point I was like, so then I picked up a quarter at the Haunted Museum. And my girlfriend was like, what do you mean? And she was like getting all on my case. And my dad kind of laughed it off. My dad was like, well, seems like it's working pretty well for you. Maybe it's like a good curse for you and then bad curses for the people around you. But, nothing happened to him. And he doesn't really take it super seriously. So he kind of just laughed it off. And then that night we go see Cirque du Soleil's Love. It's like a big extravaganza. There's like 50 actors, tons of special effects, tons of like circus acts and stuff like that. And towards about 3/4 of the way through it, they bring out a Volkswagen microbus up on the stage, and they do to the song Revolution, and they start like jumping on it with roller skates and jumping off and all that. Of course, you know where the story is going. It broke. The bus refused to leave the stage. They were using all the hydraulics, everything they could, and the bus would not leave. And so we waited for like an hour for them to fix it, and they were like, hey, everybody just, leave. We're going to give you a refund. You got to basically see 3/4 of a show for free. And, I had seen it before. My dad had seen it before, but my girlfriend hadn't. And so we were like, well, we kind of know how it ends. So we're kind of bummed that I'm going to miss it, but, we got our money back. And these are like $200-something tickets each. And my mom was supposed to come on the trip, but she got sick. And so her seat was empty. We got her money back too. So we got 4 seats. We got 3 of us saw the show for free. We got 4 seats money back. So it was pretty nice.
As nice as it was getting the money back, Jake's girlfriend was still highly suspicious about how coincidental all of these events seemed to be.
And so that night, my girlfriend was like, all right, we are doing a salt bath. We are putting the quarter in the safe, and we are leaving it for the night. So we got some cup of water, heated it up, like hot water, put salt in it, put the quarter in it, put it in the safe, locked the safe, closed the cabinet that the safe was in, and then we laid down in the bed and we proceeded to go to sleep. And about 6 o'clock in the morning, we hear a ting coming from inside the safe, it sounded like. And I thought nothing of it, but my girlfriend was terrified, so she didn't get back to sleep. I went right back to sleep. And in the morning, cabinet that the safe was in was open. And the safe looked like it had been shifted a little bit. And we took the quarter out, and my girlfriend said, all right, we are taking this back to the Haunted Museum. And so we took it back. They said they were going to put it back where we got it. I explained to them exactly where I found it. It was at the foot of this really creepy, the corner store, the drugstore Indian things that they used to have in the 50s and 60s. So I was like, yeah, I found it right at the foot of that. And they took it. And we bought some sage from them. We bought some bracelets made of meteorites and stuff like that would keep us safe. And nothing else happened for the rest of the trip. It was I didn't get any quarters, nothing bad happened. It was just a normal trip. So for essentially the day and a half, I brought a ghost or something out of the Haunted Museum for a nice day and a half trip around Vegas.
Jake did the right thing taking that quarter back. And he got lucky that they had a safe evening out. Some people who collect cursed items are not so fortunate. The Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona has a clear sign that states collecting petrified wood is prohibited. But of course, that doesn't stop people. But the penalty for stealing petrified wood is much steeper than a fine. Since 1934, staff at the national park have been collecting and archiving conscious letters. Letters written by people from all over the globe who have stolen petrified wood, took it home, and regretted it so deeply that they sent it back. The letters range from short little apologies to long stories of how once the wood came home, their lives truly fell apart. Homes were lost, marriages ended, troubles at work, and tragedy was a constant companion. For most, once the wood was returned, so was their good luck. Some people even note that they had heard about the curse, but they didn't believe or chose to ignore it, and now they had been suffering the curse of the petrified wood. Still to this day, the park rangers receive packages of petrified wood and conscience letters, while the senders wait at home, desperate for the curse to be broken. Imagine a dark, misty autumnal evening. You're in high school having a slumber party with your besties, and one of the crew pulls out a Ouija board. No better place to try it out than the local cemetery, right? So you all squeeze into the back of one of your friend's old Ford Escorts and make your way to hallowed ground. The thing is, on this particular evening, the ghosts aren't the only ones in the cemetery you need to be on the lookout for.
So about 10-ish years ago, a couple of friends of mine decided to do what any responsible high school kids would do, and go play Ouija board in a cemetery.
This is Miguel, and boy, was he not prepared for the trick-or-treat evening his friends were about to endure.
So we found a really nice cement square in the middle of the cemetery, and we decided this is a really good spot to set up. So we set up the Ouija board and kind of messed around with it for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and nothing really happened. And we had friends kind of moving everything and making us kind of be even more skeptical of it, because we knew everyone was just kind of messing around. And I remember one of my friends finally was just like, okay, well, let's try it one more time. Everybody really just try and focus and be present, and let's just try it once. And then if not, we'll leave. So we all put our hands on and we asked, is anybody there? I felt it move without anybody moving it. It was very clear because you could see everybody's hands the way that they were just barely touching what was happening. So it said yes. And so we started to ask it a couple more questions. These 17-year-old babies just kind of freaked out that this board is communicating with us. And finally we asked it its name, and it gave us what seemed like a last name. And we asked, are you buried here? And the board said yes. And then we asked, should we look for your gravestone? So it said yes. And we decided that 2 of us were going to go look and take the flashlight we had, and 2 of us were going to stay and continue to communicate with the board. I was lucky enough to be one of the 2 going to go look for this gravestone.
So the 2 boys begin to wander from row to row of headstones, looking for the final resting place of their spectral connection.
And all of a sudden, probably 20, 30 feet from us, we're shining the light, and we see what looks like tennis shoes in the distance. And I'm like, what? Why is someone else out here? What's happening? And as we're starting to shine the light up to see what it is, we hear a voice say, don't shine the light over here. And I've never clenched every muscle in my body so quick. We lowered the flashlight and just kind of slowly turned around and kept walking, and kind of tried to shine the light over again and again to see if that person was gone. And we never saw more of a person. We never saw more shadow outlines or anything, but we shone the light over where we did before, and the figure was gone. So we were confused. We're like, was that a ghost? Was that just another person? What's happening? So we keep looking for this gravestone, maybe 3 or 4 more minutes after that. And all of a sudden, our friends who were still communicating with the board, we see them running towards us. And they're just like, run, just run, run. We're like, what's happening? So we don't ask, we just keep running. We follow them, we jump back in our car, and we start to drive away. And after, a second of us being quiet because we're very confused, we ask, well, what happened? Why did we run away? What did you guys see? And they just said, I don't know. I don't know why we were running away, except that the board spelled out run.
So the friends drive back to Miguel's house in a hurry, scared, confused, and totally spooked out.
I lived in a house where we did not watch the news. If we ever watched the news, it was in Spanish, but we never watched the news. We would never end the night of watching TV on a channel that had news. But somehow when we got home, we turned on the TV and it was on some news channel. And right when we turned it on, they're starting a report about a guy who murdered his family was caught in the cemetery like 15 minutes prior. So they were like, breaking news. This person was just caught in the cemetery hiding out after killing his family tonight. So the spirit protected us from this crazy murderer man. And I just sat and I was relieved and confused. And we all kind of just like sat and thanked the spirit that saved us from who knows what, right? I mean, we didn't shine the light on that figure, so that could have been that guy.
I think all of us adults can agree this was a terrible idea from the start for abundance of very different non-paranormal reasons. But what's amazing is that someone was looking out for those kids that night and took good care of them when they weren't making smart decisions for themselves.
The thing that I hold on to the most when people ask me if I believe in ghosts or spirits, and I'm like, yeah, one saved my life.
If you ask for my witchy wisdom, don't take things from haunted places and don't play with Ouija boards in cemeteries. But you don't need me to tell you that. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.